our state, this scene happens too often every day. Death by overdose on heroin.
In the past few years, the number of deaths due to overdose on heroin has risen dramatically in Ohio.
The problem is widespread and it has an impact on all of us.
It cuts across all economic levels and makes its way into all types of neighborhoods, whether it be inner city or upper class suburb.
We all need to be more aware of this problem and know what we can do to stop it.
Let's first take a look at the cause of this problem.
I think one of the reasons that we're seeing an increase in heroin has to do with the situation of what began in the past as an effort by law enforcement to combat the prescription drug abuse. And as we clamp down more on that and work to eliminate that, I think heroin has kind of taken the place of that situation that we had in the past.
We're losing about 6 to 7 people a day from unintentional drug overdoses. When you look at the statistics for heroin, it's about 3 to 4 people a day. And those statistics that I'm referencing are a couple years old. So we know that we still have a problem. We know that fentanyl and now carfentanil, which is, is something that they use on large animals at the zoo as a tranquilizer, is a problem in our neighborhoods and with our kids and with our parents. There are no boundaries on this drug.
Well, I think one of the reasons that heroin, the availability of it has increased is because there's a lot of incentive from every drug dealer to keep their clientele hooked on a very addictive, a substance that will keep their people they're dealing to coming back over and over again. Whereas somebody may use a marijuana dealer once in a while, they'll be back to that heroin dealer every chance they get because the heroin's so addictive.
Yeah, there is an increase in rural areas due to pricing. Maybe a berry of heroin in Columbus would cost you about $8. Here, farther away from the city and the travel, dealers are getting about $20 for those same berries. So it didn't take long for the big city dealers to understand that they've got a group of clientele, in a rural area like Mount Vernon, they can come here and make a lot more profit.
In some of the suburbs, it's a little bit easier perhaps to fly under the radar. They hope to perhaps catch law enforcement a little off guard in some of the rural areas. They're kind of playing it with carrying smaller amounts of the drug. They don't carry any weapons. They try to fly under the radar and just stay hidden as long as possible. So I think that's why they're kind of spreading out into that territory.
Heroin is definitely increasing among teens because it is so cheap and it is so easy to get, and it is a very fast high, and they're addicted almost immediately.
Opium contains the active ingredient morphine, which was identified in the 1840s and purified. So morphine is more potent than opium because it contains the pure active ingredient. The hypodermic needle was invented by an Englishman in the 1850s and was used almost exclusively for morphine injections. Morphine is much more effective if injected than if it's taken orally. This is a molecular model of the morphine molecule. Each of the beads that you see is one atom. The black beads represent carbon atoms, and the white ones represent hydrogen atoms. Most of the atoms are carbon and hydrogen. The 3 red atoms are oxygen, and this lone blue one at the top is nitrogen. Heroin is a more potent drug than morphine because it can get into the brain more readily. However, once it's inside the brain, something has to happen to it before it can exert its effect. Inside our brain, we have an enzyme that's able to remove these extra pieces, replace them with hydrogen, and that has converted the heroin molecule back into morphine again. That's important because the molecule needs to fit into a receptor, and if my hand is the receptor, it goes in this way. If the acetyl group had been covering over this oxygen atom, that would make it too large and it would not be able to enter the receptor. So it's actually morphine that causes the drug effects in our brain, but heroin is a more powerful version of morphine because these extra pieces helped to transport the drug into the brain faster. The same group of chemists who invented aspirin worked on morphine. Morphine had its undesirable side effects, and they thought they could improve it, and so these chemists used the same chemical reaction that created aspirin to add some groups to morphine. And then one of the scientists in the laboratory tried it. He loved the feeling of power that it gave him. He said that it made him feel heroic, and so Bayer named their product heroin.
I think that most people in the state of Ohio would be shocked to learn that Ohio is second in the nation in unintentional overdose deaths. On average, there are 7 people in the state of Ohio dying per day.
Heroin does more than create problems for the user.
It also has a negative impact on their families.
The physical effects of heroin on the body are many and devastating. If you've ever seen a picture of a patient or somebody before they started using heroin and after, you can see quite a difference between the two.
Psychologically, heroin can be extremely devastating. The drug itself, when a person does not have the drug in their system, they can experience drug-induced depression to clinical severity, to the point where they might become very suicidal, very despondent, really wanting to isolate themselves, having a lot of low self-esteem.
Heroin totally destroys families. The family typically has to shun the family member in order to get peace, because the family member will steal and rob and just destroy any relationship to get what they want.
Way back in high school, Carl participated in alcohol and pot, and then later it ventured out into pills, and we finally realized that he was using, you could smell the pot, and a lot of the kids nowadays are switching to pills because you can't smell it. But Carl just progressed. He was competitive, and the guys he ran with, very good kids, but they were making poor peer decisions, and it just kept escalating. It was kind of like, I'll do it if you do it, I can do it, you know, that type of thing. And it escalated and eventually led to heroin.
Holly Noel started using with prescription meds. A friend of hers got into it, and she was curious about it and decided to try it as well. That only lasted just a couple of weeks, and I knew something was going on, and sat her down and asked her, you know, what are you doing? What's going on? I can tell something's happening. And she told us the truth. And we were very ignorant of the whole thing, dealing with addiction and how it affected a person.
I think I figured out Jake was up to something. There was change in behavior. I think that as he progressed in his use, there was a sense of defensiveness that would come up quickly. If I asked questions, the immediate defense would come up. And there were a couple occasions where I did catch him with actual stuff on him, and which prompted me to drug test, which I thought I was doing the right thing, but little did I know he was actually wearing this contraption around his waist where he was getting urine from a buddy who didn't use drugs, and so his tests were always coming up negative.
Carl was living at home, and his bedroom was upstairs above our family room, and he overdosed about 4:30 on a Friday afternoon and fell off his bed, so we heard a thud. We ran upstairs and realized what had happened. I couldn't get a pulse, and he didn't appear to be breathing, so I immediately started CPR on him while my wife called 911, and we could hear the sirens coming in the background, and I'm working on Carl, but I'm not getting anywhere.
For over a year, her and her fiance both had gotten clean, and were doing good, and something really bad had happened at work, and she felt like, to be able to face her boss that next day, that she needed to use to be able to go into work. And that batch of heroin, it was 3 times more powerful than anything they had ever seen, which is one of the reasons why I believe fentanyl was mixed into it. It killed her instantly.
Following Carl's overdose, he was life-flighted to Riverside Hospital, where he was in a coma for 2 days, and then we lost him. While at the hospital, Ellen and I talked about, we've got to do something to help prevent this from happening to other families. And I developed a speaking program, and it has developed over the years. And for the past 7 years, I've spoken to over 17,000 young people.
I feel incredibly lucky that Jake sought out rehab before an attempted suicide was successful. I feel very, very lucky. It breaks my heart when I meet a parent who has lost a child to addiction.
So it took a long time, a very long time, and I still am not always okay. I'm not the person I used to be. I never will be. That was a part of the whole situation that I didn't expect, and I struggled with the most, because the day that I buried Holly, I buried myself, or the person that I was. And so it's been difficult finding me again.
Since Carl passed, I put together this PowerPoint presentation, and I talk a lot about peer pressures, positive peer pressures, and it's very casual and fun with the young people, and they don't realize that Carl had passed until we get way into it. And I talk about Carl being raised in a small town, just your average child, involved in Little League and sports, and honor student in the National Honor Society, very popular with his classmates, funny, one of the funniest guys you'd ever want to know. And then it builds up. We talk about holidays and holiday gatherings with a large family, and just I casually tell the young people that, you know, Carl won't be at this Easter dinner or whatever the holiday is of the time, that he won't be able to make it because, and this is where I hit them with what happened to Carl. And the tone of the presentation changes right there at that turning point. And I talk to the young people about how the decisions they make affect for generations. And this is our granddaughter Carly, who was named after Carl. And we'll never know how cool Carl was.
I created a Facebook group, and the original intent was just a place for all of Holly's friends and family to get together and remember her. And together we came up with the name Holly Song of Hope. It wasn't me, that was everyone that was in the group. We would post stuff about her, stuff about heroin, started learning things. I started posting questions, and in 6 months' time, we were very close to 1,000 people.
So it's been multifaceted probably, but I think the biggest thing has just been making sure Jake knows he's loved and supported, and I don't even like to entertain that word relapse. I just won't go there.
Addiction can take place quickly.
And it can lead to a devastating life.
Started using